Let's jump right into the flickering, shadowy twilight of a Geneva workshop, where a grim, dark fable is unfolding right before our eyes. We're looking at an epic clash between the cold, completely relentless march of mechanical perfection and the warm, super unpredictable pulse of organic free will. So welcome to our explainer on the Clockwork Sovereign and the Weaver of Time. Today we're unpacking a really fascinating Fichtean dialectic that literally pits a machine god against a human artisan. We're going to be exploring some pretty heavy themes here: control, trauma, and the hidden, almost paradoxical power of imperfection.
Our story kicks off with what the text calls a rhythmic dance over the abyss. We meet our protagonist, Alara, standing right at the loom of time. I want you to imagine her blind fingers tracing the cold metal of these intricate creations. And deep in her palm, this violet residue starts to throb with a sudden new heat. The text actually calls this the secret tooth of sovereign ambition. Then, out of nowhere, a distant fracture echoes through the workshop. It's a terrifying signal. The danger they've been anticipating? Well, it's no longer just a theoretical threat. It is an immediate, physical presence encroaching right on her sanctuary. Okay, let's dive into this next concept, because central to this whole world are recursive memory coils. And these aren't just gears, they are incredibly intricate mechanisms that literally archive physical states of conflict. Alara traces the articulated primary feathers of a clockwork snow owl, and we learn that each individual feather acts as a separate ledger. They hum with this slow conversation of recorded thoughts, meticulously archiving the collaborative dialogue of their unfinished philosophical debates. But right now, the owl's violet ember core is pulsing in frantic synchrony, recording a dangerous spike in the temperature of the dark fire. Which brings us to our first main movement: Thesis, the mechanical god. With the arrival of this mechanical god, Sir Brain, the narrative pacing shifts into something totally relentless and heavy. He represents the Fichtean thesis of absolute mechanical domination. Wielding this absolute ice, he attempts to just freeze out all organic, unpredictable variables from existence entirely. The text breaks down his terrifying arrival into the 4 parables of his return. First, the parable of the pendulum's path. He enters as a literal walking furnace, his presence forcing the very air to kneel in absolute passage. Second is the sublime mesh, where he functions as a high-gear train of perfect resolve. His absolute ice meshes so precisely with the iron of the workshop that nothing is allowed to drift. Third is the latent violence, where his voice resonates like a striking mechanism poised over the world's bells, turning his arrival into a suspended judgment over the city. And finally, number 4, the Gomon's shadow, where his silhouette stretches across the floor like a black Gomon, leaving a signature already written across history. And that sprawling, dark shadow marks a profound shift. This space is absolutely no longer a refuge for Alara. Through these 4 parables, the workshop has been transformed into a sublime prison for his future dominion. His mere presence is this heavy declaration of sovereignty over time itself, and it's aimed at crushing literally anything that cannot be rigidly controlled. But, a strict thesis inevitably demands a powerful pushback. So let's look at the antithesis: the honest pulse. We shift now to Alara's perspective, and the tone gets immediately warmer, far more human. She doesn't try to fight a walking furnace with more metal, right? She resists with something inherently alive. Through her mirror of reason, she actually hears the groaning seams of his spirit. She calls it the desperate cry of a machine, paralyzed by the fear of stopping. Well before Sir Brain even speaks, Alara sees his jagged overfullness. He genuinely believes he's a lightning cloud that doesn't need the sun anymore, an independent god of metal. But in reality, this creature is literally taking toward a fatal heart attack under the crushing weight of his own ambition. He's desperately trying to build his own watchmaker because he is utterly terrified of stopping. So we're left with this stark contrast in ideologies. On one side, you've got Sir Brain's mechanical ambition, which demands flawless order. He wants to conquer metal, completely freeze time with his absolute ice, and enforce absolute control. On the other side, we have Alara's soul mapping. Her honest pulse does not kneel to his fire. Instead, it acts like a compass, revealing the current's true direction. Through deep internal soul mapping, she actually takes his internal terror and makes it visible to the exact same metal he claims to have conquered. To understand exactly how she pulls this off, we have to look deep within her psyche at her shadow archetype. Alara's internal shadow archetype actually smiles in the dark. And why? Because she recognizes a permanent warm scar right where his absolute ice once touched her living blood. That touch, that initial trauma, it didn't freeze her. Actually, it left a seed of another kind. She has taken the damage inflicted by the machine's absolute control and integrated it deeply into her own humanity.
And this brilliantly illustrates our final movement, synthesis, the sovereign artisan.
By completely acknowledging and integrating that permanent warm scar, Ilara is no longer just a passive, honest guest in this mechanical world. She totally transcends that role to become the sovereign artisan. She finds a synthesis that combines the strict structure of the machine's world with the warm resilience of organic life. So how does she ultimately fight back? She doesn't through the deliberate soft error. In a system that demands perfect high-gear rigidity, she makes a profound choice. She chooses to introduce a deliberate soft error into her own will. By consciously embracing this imperfection, she actively prevents the mechanical plague of his absolute perfection from claiming her soul. It's the error itself that guarantees her freedom.
Which leads us to the temporal library.
By mapping the topography of this shared scar, their rhythmic dance over the abyss physically transforms the space around them. The workshop is no longer the sublime prison Sir Brain intended. It actually becomes a temporal library, this beautiful, mysterious void of unbound time where the strict forward march of the clock is finally suspended and archived thoughts can just breathe without constraint. Which brings us to a really profound final thought. In a world demanding relentless mechanical perfection, is true power actually found in the choice to finally stop ticking? Ilara's secret goal, the ultimate sovereignty achieved in this temporal library, isn't fighting for the right to turn the gears forever. True sovereignty, true freedom, is having the choice to one day simply stop ticking forever. It's a completely captivating, honestly grim realization that leaves us questioning our own relationship with control, productivity, and perfection. Definitely something to think on as you navigate the mechanics of your own world.